Daniel, this morning's session really highlighted the difficulty of the relationship, we think anyway, between the consultancy profession and the building and services or building contractors, leaving us always a perennial problem with less and less and less time, not just at the final stages, but generally all the way through the chain. What can be done about it?
I think the challenge we face in working with building contractors is that their priorities are very different to ours, in that whilst we both represent the best interest of the client, they're working to a certain brief, which is often focused on cost or time. And ultimately what we're working towards is the best end result for the client. So I think it's about bringing those two together, educating them in the way we need to do things, but also in accepting education from them in the way they need to do things, so that between us we're working towards a common goal in a way that complements each other's responsibilities.
I mean, clearly how we do that is very much open debate. Is now the main problem being the cost accountant or the people costing the whole job, and they're the people. How can we get through to those people and educate them on how important AV is in the mix, and therefore should be costed accordingly, and it should be prioritised a bit more than it is?
I think we need to do as much as we can to just get in front of these people and spend time with them and explain to them what we do, why we do it, the fact that we're doing it, to create an end user experience that is better than the one the client has at the moment. Ultimately, everyone on the project team is driving towards a successful project for the client. Nobody is looking to obstruct that process. It's just that maybe they don't understand every element of what needs to take place in order for the client to achieve exactly what they're hoping to at the end. So I think it's just a case of spending time together, all the different people on the project team outside of a project environment, which is very stressful, very short on time, quite high pressure. If we spend time together as potential project teams outside of that project environment, then it's a much nicer environment in which to discuss the way we do our job, the way they do theirs, and see how we can bring them all together.
Is there a big disconnect there between the sort of people who are traditionally users of AV and those who are specifying the building and say, well, this is it, that's what we're doing, just focus on getting this thing up, functioning correctly and so on, and therefore, but the people actually having to work in the building and hopefully thinking they're going to be, working with bristling new AV and it's going to be all singing, all dancing, going to be pretty disappointed, aren't they?
Yeah, I think there's I think the way that a construction company, for example, understands AV can be quite simplistic, in that what they understand is what they can see, and what they can see is a screen on a wall, some speakers in a ceiling, and maybe a laptop input point on a table. They can't see, and therefore don't necessarily consider all of the other elements that go into making that system work, and the importance of all of those elements. So their focus potentially is on having a wall ready to install a screen onto, but not thinking about cable routes and rack space in rack rooms and comms rooms and all those kinds of things. I think also they're looking at it purely from a hardware perspective. So to them it's a commodity to be installed on time and under budget. They're not necessarily thinking about how those systems are going to be used, and if the way they're going to be used needs to influence the way they're installed potentially or specified.
But the original vision of the architect, we've always given them a bit of a bashing in the past, but architects, I think, on the whole, have got better over the years of actually, including AV or technology within their architectural vision, as it were. Should they be issuing slightly stronger guidelines about how AV is an important part of the building and therefore passing it through to building directly, which they tend to do, don't they?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think we deal with two different groups of people. One is, so there are architects and interior designers, and what we find often is an interior designer as part of their drawing package, and often this has been put together before we join the project team. They've incorporated AV, and so the client is under the impression that AV is included in the new space. What they've actually done is drawn displays on their floor plans. They haven't necessarily thought about what goes on behind those displays. So often we'll come to a project team and be told that audiovisual has been incorporated already. What that actually means is someone's placed displays on walls on a floor plan without actually thinking through the other services required to support those. So generally the first thing we do on any project is connect up all those displays that have been drawn and get the infrastructure in place in advance of a contractor coming along, to make sure that as walls are going up, containment's in place and services are in the right places and all those sorts of things.
Where are we now? Is that situation got a bit better, or do we see a bit of light at the end of the tunnel? Are things doable, or are we facing a bleak future in terms of how the whole thing's managed for AV?
I don't think we're facing a bleak future. I think the management of AV as part of projects generally is getting better, and I think it's because people's awareness is getting better. It's no longer such a dark art. It used to be the case that the only people who understood the AV were the AV people, and that's not necessarily the case anymore. People are much more open, much more tech savvy, much more used to interacting with technology through their personal devices, the devices they have at home. So people are beginning to understand that it is just more than a TV on a wall.